Our second reading this morning comes to us from the end of a story that almost all of us probably know quite well. But because it's often painted as a children's story, I'm not sure that we often give it a second thought. I certainly never did until I was working on my degree. See, once upon a time, when the earth was still new, humans had already figured out how to be terrible to each other. And what is worse, we'd figured out how to do it on a large scale. God had created a beautiful world for us, and we looked around and saw nature not as a sustaining force, but as raw materials to create weapons. And God was hurt, and God was disappointed. Maybe God wasn't exactly surprised, but God was certainly not happy about how quickly our wonder at creation had turned to violence towards each other. God called out to us, but we didn't listen for God's voice above our own shouting. So God was angry, as God had absolutely every right to be, because we were supposed to be taking care of God's earth and taking care of all of God's children. But instead, we were taking care of ourselves and creating hierarchies of us and them, and they don't matter. God wanted to fix it. God wanted to reach out and end our wars and turn our faces towards love and kindness and pull our bows and arrows and knives right out of our hands. But God had given us free will, which is often a curse as much as it is a blessing, because there are consequences to the choices that we make, and those consequences don't affect just us. So God thought about starting over, flooding the earth and washing it clean, and returning creation to its original state of welter and waste and darkness. Maybe this time, humanity would be better. Almost all mythologies have a version of the story of the Great Flood across continents and cultures. I can tell you from my own experience that floods are terrifying. We want things that are that big and that terrible to have some kind of meaning behind them, because we want to know why bad things happen. But sometimes they just do. No meaning, no lesson, no one to blame. Sometimes bad things just happen. God set a world into motion in which orbs in the sky dictate the movement of water, and minerals deep in the earth affect the growth of crops. It's a careful balance, but sometimes it tips, and there is flooding or famine or disease. It has happened before, and it will happen again and again and again. Our ancestors told stories to make sense of it all. And somewhere along the line, a historical flood grew in its retelling to cover the entire earth and drown all but 2 representatives of every known species. It didn't happen. Not like that. But God would have been justified if God had indeed chosen to start over. It didn't happen. But even if it had, the cycle of sin and violence would have just started right over again, too. The important part of the story isn't the colorfully illustrated pairs of animals marching 2 by 2, and it isn't the fantasy of identifying with the one family worth saving, and it isn't even God's wrath, even though we deserved it. And still often do. The point is the covenant that comes at the end of the story, as God meets us and sets a sign in the sky to remind us all to pause and take a breath and be awed by its beauty, and be amazed at the love and power of our God who hung it there in the sky. Our second reading this morning comes to us from the book of Genesis, chapter 9, verses 8 through 17. Hear now the word of the Lord. Then God said to Noah and to his sons with him, "As for me, I am establishing my covenant with you and your descendants after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the domestic animals, and every animal of the earth with you, as many as came out of the ark. I establish my covenant with you, that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of a flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth." God said, "This is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you, for all future generations. I have set my bow in the clouds, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring clouds over the earth and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh, and the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it, and remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth." God said to Noah, "This is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth." This is the word of the Lord. I'd never really thought about it until I listened to my friend Kevin give a sermon on this story. But the bow isn't just a shape, it's a weapon, like what Susan Pevensey or Hawkeye or Legolas or Robin Hood carries. Setting a bow in the sky is like a giant divine equivalent of you drop your sword and I'll drop mine. No tricks, no double crossing. God means every word of this covenant promise of peace, even though God knows that we humans will inevitably pick up our own weapons again. Because no matter how much we might deserve something different, God still comes out to meet us in the wilderness, in the mud, in the hard places. God comes out to offer us something better. The universe is full of cycles, and the covenant rainbow is one of them. It can often feel easy to fall into a void of hopelessness because there is so little in this world that we have control over. That's why I paint my nails every week, to remember that there are bright spots, no matter how dark the world seems. I like to think that rainbows are like God's fingernails, metaphorically anyway. Because the rainbow as covenant and reminder aren't just for us. They're for God, too, declaring in great big letters across the sky, God is love. God is mercy. God is second chances. God is big enough to love us no matter who we are or what we do or how close we come to breaking God's heart. God sees us, all of us, and God still comes out to meet us again and again and again.